Go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, Tom Laidlaw. You know him from appearing on the Survivor Show, and you know him from him being a fitness guru, a person who lives a true grit lifestyle, and of course, a former NHL player. Played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. It's funny, Tom, that I now put former NHL players third on your list of.
Yeah, you know what? It is interesting. It was last week I had a conversation with a former teammate of mine talking about how, in his mind, we are always be known as former NHL players. And I said to him, well, like, that's really not what I think there's a whole other life after you're done. You can be more than just, I love the NHL, I love playing, but I don't want to be just known as just a guy who played in the National Hockey League. It's interesting you say that, Jeff.
Well, what's funny about that is, let's say you live to be 100.
Yeah.
Which is possible with the lifestyle you live. Well, only 1/10 of your life will have been spent in the NHL.
Very true. Yeah.
But, another 10% as an agent. Well, how long did you work as an agent?
22 years. I was an agent. 22. So
wow.
32 years total. Yeah. But still, I see your point. Like, yeah. And I know, like, this too from being around athletes, and there's some fantastic people, but the sports world isn't it's great. It's an accomplishment. It's a goal that you go after, and it's I'm proud of myself. I did it, but it's not like it's the end all be all. There's a lot of other things in life. Like, you're a fantastic family man, right? I mean, you wouldn't trade your family for anything in the world, even if you got a chance to play in the National Hockey League. So,
no. Well, sometimes and I was in the world in a different capacity, obviously, but sometimes it almost seems like it's a pretend world.
Totally.
Like, because the same rules that apply for everyone else don't always apply in the in the sports world. So
we don't even know that. You don't know that as an athlete too until you get out of it.
I know.
It's funny. You look back and you go, like, what was I thinking? Like, there's a whole other world out there,
Yeah. Well, what's really weird is the economics of it all. Like, I never gave it much thought when I was until several years ago when I heard actually one of your former clients, Brian Berard, talk about all the financial ruin that he went through because of some bad financial decisions that he made. And he pointed out that you really, in order to be financially set, and he defined financially set as $200,000 a year for the rest of your life, you got to make like $5.5 or $6 million during your career.
Yeah.
Which you can do in a year if you're a top player, but what's the percentage of top players in the NHL? So, and the problem is I think what happens that where players get in trouble, and you can speak to this even better, is you tend to try to live as if the same way I would once I reach a certain salary level, because you think you'll have that salary the rest of your career, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. When I got off in the agent business, funny you say that. I got off in the agent business, and our good friend Mike Barnett was working with IMG, and we were talking about me starting to work there, and talking about salary and everything. And that was one of the conversations we had. That he said, "Listen, I know the way you athletes are. You have the expectation that you should be making the same money that you played in the National Hockey League, but that's just not the way the world works." And so those kind of lessons were like things like, "Wow, I'm like you don't know. You've never gone through it before that you're going to retire from the National Hockey League, and all of a sudden you're retired and you've got to face all those issues, right, that you didn't face before." I think guys are getting better advice now, and they're making much more money too. But we didn't have a clue what was heading our way upon retirement.
Yeah. Well, let's look at it in terms of here you're say you're an average NHL player. You're making a couple $1 million a year, but you're not the kind of player that for sure you're gonna be playing 10 or 12 years. You're not quite sure. So anyway, but you buy a really nice house in a really exclusive area. You get a 30-year mortgage, and your house payment is $5,000 or $6,000 a month because you can afford to do that. Well, after your 10, 11 years. You lost the step, it didn't work out, and now you're going to be done at age 32 or 33. Well, you still got 18 years left on paying that mortgage, and your income at that point is zero. Now, maybe you're going to get a job somewhere, or maybe you put some of that money away, but it still is not easy. You're going to have to do something. And it's not. Sometimes I think that if you get good advice, you know, as a player, I think you'll be fine the rest of your life. But if you don't,
Yep.
you know, so I don't know how many of the players that you played with are set for life.
None. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do a show. We do a show on Thursday afternoons now. We just started with the Ron Greshner, Ron Duguay, Dave Maloney, and myself. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a given that because of when we played and how much or how little money we made when we played, yeah, we'll still have to work and continue to work. So even during this pandemic, you know, a lot of us do a lot of, like, I'm out doing speaking engagements all the time, do a lot of work with the New York Rangers, and that's all dried up too. So it's, you know, the one, you know, some of the guys were talking about, you know, going out and getting another job in the meantime while this pandemic eventually ends. So yeah, it's a different world. It's funny. Well, we had last week, it was funny. We had Boomer Esiason on, the former quarterback who does a radio show here in New York. And he's done very well after the game. You know, he's broadcast on CBS, and he's got his own radio show in the morning. And yeah, but he's aware of, you know, like he's one of the few guys that has really done well after the game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it requires some planning. I mean, like, people don't probably, like, the fans don't understand how important it is for an athlete to pick the right agent. It's not just about negotiating the salary, but it's getting you into the, you know, right, you know, financial situation for life. If that agent doesn't have the expertise in that area, he or she needs to be working with somebody who does.
Yeah. And some of it, Kevin, too, is that, and you know, these guys, and I was the same way. Part of the reason that you're able to make it as a professional athlete is you got this stubbornness that you know what you're doing. You'll never, nothing bad will ever happen to you. You'll always get it done, and you push through things. You get things done. But part of the problem with that too was when you go now into that world, a financial world, I've seen cases where guys trust certain people for the wrong reasons. They may trust them because they're fun to go out with at night after the game and go over a few beers with. You know, instead of having a financial planner that is there because he's a trustworthy financial planner, not because he's your buddy or your pal.
Right.
And that happens a lot with players.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get on to today's agenda. Tom, you and I debated last week about whether or not we should hold the draft at the beginning of June instead of waiting till after the season. We went over the issues of the pros and cons. You know, the pro for you and the important one is to bring the NHL back into the spotlight. That people are starved for hockey news, and we're kind of lost in the shuffle because there's so many sports out and nobody's talking about the NHL. And I think that's a primary reason why the NHL wants to do it. They want to get back in the limelight. A lot of GMs felt the way that I did, which is, you know, the way we're going to do it, it's going to complicate it. You know, some of the trades have been made based on where you're going to appear in the standings, and they'll have to adjust those. We don't really know what the final standings are going to be, so we're going to have to come up with some formula that will do that, because people are concerned that a team out of the playoffs now could end up winning the sweepstakes and get Lafreniere, and then the league would look bad if they came back and made the playoffs and got Lafreniere. They want to adjust and turn back the clock a little bit, and perhaps use the rules that we had in place before, where you can only move up 4 spots, which means that only 5 teams have a shot at Lafreniere, which to me, that's the primary reason why I didn't want to do it. It's like changing the rules in midstream after fan bases have been sort of counting on that. But saying all that, a memo went out this week from Commissioner Gary Bettman, where he spelled out, it was from Bill Daly, and he pointed out that the way we normally do things just isn't going to be available anyway, for whatever reason. That's the way he saw it. So it led me to believe that the vote from the Board of Governors is going to be, we're going to have this in June. And how do you feel about it now that you've had time to think about it? You still think this is the right decision?
Oh, yeah, I think it's the right decision. But the points that you made and the objections that the general managers have are all valid concerns. I think it's highly unlikely, given where the teams that are so far back in the playoff hunt will end up getting the first overall pick in the draft and then make the playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen, but I guess in theory could happen. I just see that I look at all the pro sports and everybody that has to adapt to to COVID-19. This is a unique time. It's a time that we've never really dealt with before. And we maybe this is something we're going to have to deal with moving forward, but we're going to have to make adjustments. Yes, and it will not be totally fair. It won't be perfect. It won't be the way it was in the past. But I do agree with the NHL stance that this is an opportunity. Nothing else is going on. They saw the 55 million viewers that followed the NFL draft. Now, we're not going to get that for the NHL draft, but it's an opportunity now with nothing else on TV to really promote the game of hockey. And I think we're going to have to move forward. I think all those concerns about always being fair and having things the way they were, we're going to have to kind of stow that, I think, because I just feel that, we talk to some people think it could be 2 years in some cities before we get people back into buildings like, some of the bigger metropolitan areas. So we're going to have to be creative about ideas for promoting the game of hockey, particularly on TV. And we talked about the tracking puck. On the old, I'm an old school guy. I'm going to object to it, but I also say, well, if it's going to help us grow the game even more, then we need to look at different ideas. And that's why I think the draft is, moving it is a great idea.
Yeah, well, I think it's a foregone conclusion now, and it's like anything else. It's not that hard to adjust. We'll just have to do it. And I found it curious that one of the guys that was willing to go out front, one of the general managers, and say he was against it, was Detroit Red Wings general manager Steve Yzerman. And what's the irony of that, of course, is that his team will benefit by that.
Totally.
Because now. Before they could have fallen, the way the draft is supposed to work is, there's sort of 3 different draws, and you can draw into the number 1, the number 2, or the number 3. So a team with the worst record, like the Red Wings under the current system, could fall all the way down to 4. They only have actually a little bit less than 50% chance of landing in the top 3. They only have an 18 and change % chance of getting the number 1 pick. But if we go back and turn back the clock and adapt the old rules, the farthest they can slip is second.
Yep.
So his Yzerman will benefit by this, but he still said he didn't like it and didn't think it was good for the game. So
it's a little bit of the old school automatic knee-jerk reaction. It's something different. I don't like it. Right.
Well, I think it went beyond that with Steve. Steve is pretty analytical about it, and I think a lot of GMs are analytical about it. And I think they just looked at it the same way I did. That there's we could still do it after the and then we wouldn't have that. Now we wouldn't get the public relations push that we're going to get this time, and I think that's the point that maybe they're old school. I remember a real prominent GM. When I was talking to him about marketing the game, he said, "Hey, look, if I win, that's all the marketing we need." But it's really not. You're not in the modern game where you're trying to charge, more than $100 per ticket for your best tickets. You really do have to, go out and recruit fans.
Here's a question right there. Let me ask you the question. If you're the owner of an NHL hockey team, what do you want your general manager to worry about? To me, I like the answer that general manager had that you just mentioned. I want my general manager to be responsible for putting a winning product on the ice. I will hire a marketing team to do the marketing. Don't you think? So when you go to ask the GMs about whether they should have the draft or not, they should selfishly look, how's this going to benefit me or hurt me to help my team win, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. But the problem is, though, in the modern world, your GM has to work hand in hand with your marketing department. Like you can't separate that. You can't allow your general manager to say, well, I'm not, you worry about the marketing of the game. I'll worry about winning. It's not, you can't do that anymore. Not in the modern game. The first and foremost, you're absolutely right. He's got to worry more about winning and getting success on the ice than, the presentation of the team. That's the other departments. But you need a guy who's going to understand and be willing to work, with the marketing.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, I agree.
So it's just complicated. Like, the game is not the way it was even into the 1980s. Like, say what you will about Gary Bettman, but Gary Bettman has really modernized the game.
Yep.
Like that when Gary Bettman came in aboard, and you'll remember this, there were no sponsors didn't want to be associated with the NHL because of all the fighting and it just seemed almost like we had cartoon violence. And the NHL has changed its image, over the years, and now they have really big name sponsors.
We went from when he first started, Gary Bettman, wasn't the revenue around, I think it was like $700 million for the revenue. Now we're at $5 billion. So,
right. But even more importantly, I think it's just the image of the game is different, and the fact that he's now the longest standing commissioner. The NHL has had stability, and they've got cost. Not that we still don't have problems, because we do, but getting the salary cap in. I think all the concerns about how it was going to hurt the players, but it really didn't. Players are still being paid well. I mean, did it put a bit of a governor on? Yeah, probably. If we wouldn't have had the salary cap, probably Ovechkin and Crosby would be making $15+ million. But I think it has made it easier, not perfect, but easier for the smaller markets to compete.
Yep. Oh, and the additional revenue sharing, more TV dollars, all those things. Yep.
Yeah. So, and that, what, it's interesting. We never talk about that, but some of the big markets still don't love that. Like they don't.
It's kind of strange though, because we look at the NFL with their revenue sharing. Like, so you got a team, the Green Bay Packers, which is this legendary organization, right? Now they may still be able to survive, but they get a lot of revenue sharing because they are a smaller market team,
right?
And that just adds to the whole value of the entire National Football League, right? So everybody benefits from that.
Right.
So I think that's what the leagues didn't want to do before, and now they've seen that. Yeah, I guess as an individual owner that's a successful individual, you're saying, well, why am I going to share my profits with somebody else? But if it helps add value to the whole league, then it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see now. I think it's the pressure is going to be on NBC to find a way to educate the NHL fan base about who these players are that we're going to draft, because the majority of our country, I don't know, in a country of 330 million people, and I'm talking about the United States, everybody in Canada, not everybody, but the vast majority are going to know who Lafreniere is. Like, what percentage in America knows who he is? Less than 1%.
Probably.
So there's the work. NBC. That's geese flying overhead. Yes, I'm outside at my lake. I'm surprised that my dogs didn't go crazy. They do not like geese violating their airspace.
There you go.
So,
and you speak of NBC though, and it's a valid point. And I think going forward, I think NBC and everybody that covers the National Hockey League, I think we have, from the people I'm talking to, that we're going to do a better job of educating the casual fan about what the game is, like what is an offside, what is an icing. Because if we're going to have to rely on TV a lot more, if you get people in the seats all the time, or as much, to me, it seems like that's what the feedback I constantly get from people. We had this conversation before. It's, I don't understand the game. I'll sit there and watch it. Wow, it looks exciting, but then all of a sudden they stop to play, and I don't know why they stop to play. And I think we've kind of gotten away. I don't see anybody that ever does any education for the casual fan anymore.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't actually think that we have many casual fans, except when a team makes a run.
Yeah.
For the first time, or not even for the first time, but like I'll bet we had some casual fans in St. Louis that, certainly knew about the team and everything, but was not invested in it until that run last season. Right. And every year there's, fan bases like that. I'll bet there were the Carolina Hurricanes picked up some casual fans last year because of their postseason success.
But don't you think we still have just a casual fan that's spinning around their TV channel, they've got the remote control, they stop on the hockey game for 5 minutes, and they go, wow, that's pretty exciting. But then things start to happen. They don't understand. They go, I'm frustrated. I got to turn away from it.
See, I think that happens in the local markets, but I'm not sure that it is nationally. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It'd be interesting to see. Well, let's get somebody from NBC on and talk about that. Because I think
we'll get Brian Boucher, my former client. We'll get him on.
Yeah, but like, I think that's a great question, is whether or not we know there are casual NFL fans that tune in and just kind of pop in and watch a couple of games on Sunday, but they're not emotionally invested. But do we have those in hockey that come in on and watch San Jose play Arizona in the second game of the doubleheader?
Yeah.
Because I don't know the answer to that. I think there's not, but that's just a gut feeling.
And then is it going to change now too? Does the landscape change because of the virus? Now people can't go to live events for the next.
Great point.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, could we become a TV sport not because, but just by necessity?
Yeah.
People want their sports, but they don't want to risk going to the arena and hanging out with 20,000 people, and and just the definition of being a fan in a stadium or an arena goes against all safety precautions that you want to take to avoid the virus.
Yeah, totally.
Like you are right on top of the people around you. There's no room for your legs anyway, and it was before, and now it's even worse. And I mean, are people going to go to games wearing masks?
Well, when they're allowed back, you'd have to think they would be. Yeah. I mean, at least for the next. I mean, I don't know. Like, we've had this discussion so many times. I still rack my brain thinking, how does this ever totally end?
No, I don't know. Yeah. Especially, will it ever end for people my age?
Yeah.
Because now you're in that the higher risk zone, and because the mortality rate of this virus on the grand scheme of things, in terms of the number of people who get it and the number of people who pass away, is low.
Yeah.
But it's very high, and the nature of the deaths are hideous. Right. In the older portions of the population. So, like, what will that mean? And I don't know. Maybe maybe older people. I'm trying to think when I go to Lions games. You still see older people go to Lions games, so then maybe those, that'll change. Maybe I won't go, and some of the older people won't go, but the young people are still going to go. Yeah. I mean, especially when we read stories that's, a large chunk of people in New York didn't even know they had it.
Yeah.
So, if that's the case, the younger people are just going to shrug and said, well, I can handle this.
I agree. So, hey, I've got a real bone to pick here too. Got a major issue with one of our most favorite NHL current players, Joe Thornton.
Yeah.
So two things. First of all, he's had that long beard for I don't know how long now, and he did a real cute video. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was great with his daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, and she did like an "I Dream of Jeannie" thing, right? So he was there standing with the beard, and then she does the little head bob, and then he comes back. He's got no beard. But my real complaint is, like, Joe was famous for always getting interviewed with no shirt on, right? His teammates would tease him about having no shirt on. Well, he had no shirt on in this thing, but man, does he look like he's got the dad bod going. I mean, he is out of shape.
Yeah. I noticed that too, that he did not have the Laidlaw level of fitness.
Yeah. What is wrong with that? I mean, or should we read into it? Should we start spreading the rumor that Joe Thornton is going to retire because he's
well, he's at the point where he needs to consider it anyway. I mean, he's in his 40s and so forth, and this doesn't help.
No, not at all. That's a bad image.
Well, it doesn't help that he's in the middle of a pandemic, and and you don't know what kind of setup he has. You would think a player of his length of service would have a nice weight room set up in his home, but
I think he took the weights out and he put a new kitchen in there. It looked like.
But see, in the Laidlaw house, and this is what I like about your new lifestyle.
Yep.
You want both the weight room and a nice kitchen.
Yeah, you have the weights in the kitchen so you can work out while you're making smoothies and protein shakes and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Yeah. I will say, and this is on a different level, just on an aesthetic level.
Yes.
I'm glad he's rid of the beard. I do not like the Civil War reenactor look for hockey players. Okay, like
Especially how much gray in it too.
and you know like I'm barely tolerant of it in baseball. I know what I'm not even tolerant of it. I don't like it in baseball either. I just don't like the Civil War reenactor look. I mean, they really look like they're ready to march on Gettysburg.
Yeah.
A lot of those players, and so I've never liked that.
So does Brent Burns, does he follow suit now?
Yeah. You would hope so. I
Right.
mean, I've had mixed. It'd be interesting if we could ever get Brent on, because I've heard mixed versions of. Some people said, because he had kids and they got older, he got rid of all the snakes and because reptiles and all the things he had. He had like a zoo in his home.
Yeah.
And then I've heard people say, no, I didn't get rid of all of them. He just got rid of some of them. So it'd be interesting to find out where Brent Burns is,
because he's got that ranch out in Arizona or something like that.
Well, yeah, that's what what somebody told me, that he's got his reptiles elsewhere.
Yeah.
They're just not in his home anymore. So it'd be fun to Brent Burns, by the way, and I don't know, do you know him, Tom, at all?
No, I do not. I never spoke to him. Yeah.
He is a tremendous guy.
It seems like,
If you want an enjoyable talk on any level of subject, you want to get Brent Burns, and just a quality human being.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a fun guy.
He's got the look like get the teeth missing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and he just cares about everything.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's beloved by teammates because he cares about everyone he plays with and everybody in the league. He's one of those guys. Like, he'd be the type of guy that if I was Donald Fear, I'd be looking at him when his career is over, to be involved in somehow in the Players Association, just in terms of as being a liaison with players and the association, because he's just so well liked, and he's a fun guy, and I think he's got a tremendous heart. So
before I forget too, I was watching Boomer this morning, Boomer Esiason, and they had some story about two NBA reporters who did a show predicting that the NBA would not come back and finish this season, because the theory was that they didn't want to take away the resources from other people that needed testing and all that kind of stuff for their players, just so they could finish the season. I thought that was kind of interesting, because if that is the case, you kind of wonder. I mean, if hasn't it kind of been believed that whatever the NBA does, the NHL does?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've heard that as well. That I've heard kind of rumbling behind the scenes that Adam Silver is wondering if this is the right thing to do for the country to come back.
Right.
So I don't know. And obviously financially, the NBA is in a different position than the NHL. I mean, one of the issues that the NHL faces moving forward is, and we've talked about this before, but maybe we should circle back and circle it again. Just so everyone knows, we are still heavily dependent on gate revenue.
Definitely.
So when we come back and play to empty houses, where we're now, just trying to scrape through on sponsorship money and television money. Well, the television money doesn't compare to some of the other sports. I mean, it's leaps and bounds of where it used to be.
Yep.
But you're not going to get support the franchise on television money.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree totally. That is to me, where does that leave us? Right. I mean, the players, obviously from the players' side, I mean, the cap will probably stay flat. But again, as we've discussed in other shows about the escrow system, which is money that is taken out of each paycheck to make sure that they ultimately end up with that 50-50 split between the owners and the players. I got to think going into next year, or, it's got to be, typically right now it's somewhere between 10 and 20% that's taken out of each check. It's got to be at least 30% that comes out of each check. So,
well, that's true, and the players and owners are in this together. So that's why I've tried to make the point with people. I keep hearing, and I think sometimes the fans are looking at this as this will be contentious negotiations, as the Players Association and the NHL try to decide when to open, and I don't think it will be. I think they're both in this together. And, first of all, Donald Fear and Gary Bettman have been around the block. They know how these things work. But they're both pragmatic when it comes to the dollars. And, they're going to try to work together and to try to make it as painless as possible for both the players and the owners. So
and player safety is at both sides.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think they're just, the problem is there's usually you're trying to get into to whatever the right answer is. The problem is we don't know what the right answer is, and I think that's an issue that makes it very, very difficult for both sides to try to sort out. So how much time we had, Tom?
30 minutes there, Mr. Allen. 30 minutes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. You and the geese out there, a lot of talking.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we appreciate you joining us. We'll be back later in the week. By then, we'll probably know about the draft and what their plans are for that. And I wouldn't be shocked if they got an ace or two up their sleeve on this. And by that, I mean they've already got some thoughts how to spice this up a little bit.
I agree.
And they probably have NBC already sort of working on what we can do. And they'll probably attempt to sort of introduce us to some of these young stars that probably will be the stars of the game. And
what we should do too, like maybe have a feature of you in retirement sitting out in your back deck there with the geese and the dogs and everything like that. That could be the feature right there. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, sounds good. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
See you Wednesday, guys.